Okay, part 3 of the DNA, and this is where I get the most upset, is the fact that they have found male DNA throughout this case. They actually tested it against Rivera, and it was not his. But yet they refused to test it against anyone else. Not against my dad, not against James Lowe, not against Gavin Jones, no one. And I'm thinking, why? If you have found male DNA in this case on her, wouldn't you want to know?
And male A shows up again, right?
Yes,
And no one asked you to test any further, right?
correct.
That right?
Yes.
And those 2 samples, they were ran against my client's DNA, isn't that right?
Yes, they would have been.
His
Yes.
DNA was submitted,
Yes.
is that right?
Yes.
And there was no match found with my client's DNA, is that right?
That's correct.
Now, there has been no other samples submitted, isn't that right, sir?
Yes.
You could request Gavin Jones' DNA, is that right?
Yes, I could. You're right.
You also could ask for James Lowe's DNA, is that right?
Yes.
And you could submit those to the DNA lab to be reviewed, isn't that correct?
Yes.
But you haven't requested Gavin Jones's DNA, is that right?
That's correct.
You haven't requested James Lowe's DNA, is that right?
That's correct.
In fact, you haven't requested anyone's DNA other than my client's, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And last, I'd just like to add that I have offered my DNA. Obviously, it would just show a relative match, obviously, with my dad. But they don't even want that. I'm sure at this point there's like, crazy lady, stop with this already. But it does not make sense. They found other male DNA on Mollie throughout this case, and they just simply didn't test anyone else, just Rivera. And it proved it wasn't Rivera, and yet nothing with the DNA. What's the point of it? What's the point of the DNA then?